We're here at Security Field Day, and we talked about a lot of different things today. We talked about API security, we talked about data protection, we talked about secrets and super secrets and secrets. And yeah, it kind of brings to mind the fact that this isn't easy. Like one of the things that we constantly run into with security is, oh, well, that's a real easy thing. All you have to do is memorize this 2048-bit key and input it in edlin, and you better not make a mistake. And sometimes it just seems like it's a little too much. Like all the things we have to worry about. Just when we think we've protected everything we could possibly protect, then there's a new avenue that comes along, and someone figures out how to, I don't know, backdoor the lighting system or something, and now we got another vector we have to worry about. And the topic ultimately, I think, courtesy of our friend Karen over here, is security is hard, and you just need to deal with it. So I want to kind of open this up to everyone around here, because we're all people who work in security, either directly or indirectly. I mean, what makes this so hard?
It slows us down, right?
Huh?
That's the number one complaint I get from everyone, right? Security, either I'm being accused of recommending way too high of security, we're not NSA, or your security is terrible. Why are you even trying? So how do you win there? I feel like I can't win either way. I wonder what other people think about that.
Well, I'm actually in an environment where working with federal contracting.
Yeah.
So we're actually doing a lot of security. And actually we're getting, we're undergoing a lot of security lockdown to, 800-171 compliance, CMMC, certification and so forth. So we're going through a lot of it. And Karen, the premise is very spot on, and our CISO would be very happy to hear someone say that, because that's kind of, to a certain extent, kind of the mantra that we've heard is like, yeah, it's hard, but we have to do it. We don't really have a choice, for us at least. But it is challenging, because especially when you're trying to apply a lot of these controls and a lot of these different, security systems into an environment that didn't have them before. So you might have been a little looser on security controls in certain respects. The idea of moving towards ZTA, zero trust access, is a massive paradigm shift for a lot of organizations in the way they work today. And I think it's, I don't have any silver bullet on anything. From what I see, even in the federal space, it's a challenge. It's a huge challenge.
It's a pain in the ass, right? I mean, fundamentally. That's what the users. It's a pain in the ass. Actually, both sides is a pain in the ass on both sides. Because
it is.
How often do you try to do something to help people? You're trying to help them and protect them, and they hate you for trying to help them and protect them.
Yes.
Right? They actually sometimes working against you, right? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say. I mean, the attitude that users think, oh, you're security. I'm indirectly security. I'm on the networking side, but we still do a lot with security. We gotta get security gets the attitude of, oh, well, they're just the no people.
Yeah, the Department of No.
Yeah. A lot of it comes down to, we're telling people they need to do this or that to improve security, but we aren't explaining the why and how it benefits them.
Yes.
Get people on board. Tell them how this new stuff benefits them. Where, hey, a breach happens, your name's not the one that's going to be on the front page of the newspaper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or maybe it needs to be that. And that's one of the problems that I've always fought when I used to do this for a living, was trying to convince people that there's a reason why I don't want you to text each other passwords. There's a reason why you shouldn't be storing social security numbers in a text file. And the best representation that I have seen of the effectiveness of security controls is to remind someone that every time you get an email from Facebook saying your one-time login code is this 6-digit number, that was somebody trying to guess your password or force a password reset, right? Those don't just come out of thin air. You're giving them concrete examples of why those controls are so important, so that when they roll their eyes, like I broke my authenticator to log into LinkedIn a while back, and I had to sort the whole mess out. And at one point, I think I actually had to text them a picture of my driver's license, which I was like, do I really need to do this? But on the flip side, if I was somebody trying to get creative about hacking into the system,
Right.
I'd be a little bit worried about that. But it didn't start out like this. Like no organization, even the NSA, didn't start off with like fully developed multi-layer security controls. To me, it always feels like it's boiling a frog. We're gonna add one more thing. We're gonna add one more thing. And then by the time we've added enough one more things, now you've got like, the 30-minute smart card login thing that the federal government used to have, where it's like, don't take the card out or we're not going to be able to do anything until Matlock's over kind of thing.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Security is unobtainium. And it's unobtainium for a couple of fundamental reasons. One, we built a worldwide network of networks, the internet, on a fundamentally unauthenticated, unsecured packet switch network.
Yeah.
Fundamentally.
Yeah.
It is, you can't undo that, at least now, and it is the original sin. The second major problem is what you were talking about. You can't train users to be secure because the first problem of it being unobtainium because it's on the wrong fundamental technological base leads to the second, which is that you're constantly playing cat and mouse. And the cat and mouse, the mouse is always the end user. So what do we do as technologists? We get a product for this, and we get a product for that, and we get a product for this, and we get a product for that. So this is a very, it's not even a Gordian knot. It is really, really hard to do the right thing consistently, right? Because you got humans and you got bad tech. Bottom line.
There is that. And I'm so glad you brought up that we built the foundations, but it's not just the internet networking that we built on that. Almost every technology we as a society deploy is based on an assumption that there are no bad actors that would ever want to compromise it or worse, make money from it.
Exactly.
So email is based on, I can send you things. Well, not just that. Just think about it. The reason spam works is because the barrier to entry is what? Invisible, 0. And it costs almost nothing to send emails. And then we spent 2 decades trying to make anti-spam measures work. And now we know we can't really stop people from sending things. We can only block it at some giant firewall in the sky. And we continue to do it. Twitter, Facebook, every new social media thing, every new product comes out. And my sort of, I guess, negative brain says, I can figure out 5 ways to make money off this right now. And it's going to make it worse for all the users. It's only my own compass, which means that's why I'm not wealthy, that has kept me from going to do that.
Oh, it's to mangle the old IRA quote. The defenders have to be lucky every day. The attackers only have to be lucky once.
Right.
And the problem ultimately becomes that every time we've solved one of those problems, we can never remove that control lest someone figure out. I mean, wasn't that the whole concept behind no-name security? Is if you made a V1 of the API and then a V2, you still have to secure V1 because it's an entry point into your data. And if you don't believe that that's still the case, I want you to go through security at the airport.
This isn't about attackers and defenders, though. Not really.
Why?
It's about risk management, and businesses make financial decisions about what security products they're going to buy based on that assessment of risk. If we're looking at all these complex tools that do all these things, and we think about it from the attackers, defenders, because we're in IT and it's doing the right thing and that's how it's supposed to be done, nothing's going to get done because business stakeholders don't care about that. The question that we're going to be asked is, how much does this cost? What's the worst case scenario if I don't buy this thing and we get attacked or we get breached or whatever? And then they make a judgment call based on that. So we can want to do the right thing. And if there's no regulatory requirement that they be protected and be able to prove that they've put a protection in place to deal with that situation, they're not gonna.
Well, not only that, go ahead.
Yeah, I was to say when it comes down to it from the C-suite perspective and senior management level perspective, it is about cost. It is about how much am I spending for these different solutions or different packages of solutions to mitigate risk X. And like Ethan said, unless there's a financial incentive for them to make sure that they don't get caught with their pants down, it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be a very difficult sell. And that's why I think, like what we just saw, the last 24, 48 hours with what's happening with SolarWinds executives, which I haven't even had a chance to fully read up on that. But I mean, I think that's a step in the right direction, potentially.
Well,
but then again, how long ago was that hack? That was 2020.
It's a good point that you bring up. But I want to come back to that. Karen, I want you to have a chance to jump in.
Well, I was kind of going there anyway, so I'm glad you mentioned a famous breach or an infamous one, is that has compliance actually really mattered? I mean, other than some really, really high profile ones, have you heard of GDPR fines that actually went to 4% of global revenue? I haven't read about those. GDPR also brought in criminal penalties for the most egregious cases, but have we read about very large company executives going to prison because data was breached? I haven't. I mean, maybe it's happening and I'm just not hearing about it. And has it ever, have fines or penalties ever really harmed a business in a way that harmed them so much it couldn't just be put down to the cost of business? Like, I'm Debbie Downer here, but has it really helped?
I would say that there is one.
Yeah.
But we're moving out of the realm of IT. But Arthur Anderson.
Right. So these things have happened, but it's not fixing the problem.
Have you factored in the cost of free credit monitoring, Karen? Because I think I have free credit monitoring until the year 2000.
We don't get those in Canada.
Well, it's not happening to the big companies. It's happening to small companies. I mean, there's a joke in the sports world. Hey, Texas was found guilty of doing this. LSU was found guilty of that. NCAA is going to hammer Southern Miss.
Or Missouri.
Yeah. Because they're small-time programs. No one cares about them.
Right.
Yeah. But LSU, Texas, they're big money makers. Mm-hmm. Regulatory bodies don't go after the big money makers.
Well, I'm going to jump in here because I need to quote my good friend and your partner, Greg Farrow, and everything. Who cares? Like, it's actually good that you get your name in there. Oh, yeah, Target got breached. I mean, we're still talking about the Target POS breach. How many years ago did that happen? And what ultimately happened? I think my wife actually shops more at Target now, and she doesn't really care. And I don't think that there's enough, like you said, there's not enough penalty, because here's what happens. We take it to court. Either they're found guilty and fined crazy. They settle with the magic no fault thing that's put in there. And then the same people who caused the problem, because they want the cheapest solution, get to go right back. Like Ed brought up, as the news came out today, of the fact that the SolarWinds CISO and CFO are under investigation. Do you know they're still there? Yeah. Like, here's the deal. Lovely boss, Stephen Foskett. If I screw up and accidentally mail merge all of our customers' phone numbers into something, he's probably going to fire me.
The second time.
Right. Okay. But the thing is that when the CEO of a company who's very happy to take credit when they're doing well can survive something like that, it basically makes me think, well, if the boss man's not going to get canned for screwing up, why should I even care? Like, I will totally hold the smoker door open to tailgate people, or I'm going to disable two-factor authentication on the main company Twitter account because who cares?
Yeah. And the other one was, like, I was going to mention the Target one. Like, I don't remember reading any penalties they got. They might have had a stock dip for a while. Temporary. And, like we had, so Canada's largest coffee shop that is also international, they purposely continued to collect location data on their app on a phone for 2 years. They fibbed about it or misspoke, and they got caught by our privacy commissioner. And you know what their big penalty is? They have to give all of us customers a free coffee and a donut. And I still haven't used my credit because I'm insulted that my personal location data
was worth a coffee
was
and a donut.
Tracked without using the app, without having the app on, even though my phone set it to that. Like,
it's probably
why
more
bother?
value than 2 years of credit monitoring.
Yeah.
I think it's probably more worthwhile than who does credit monitoring, which is what we keep getting every time we get breached. And that's the cost. I mean, back to what Ethan said, is fundamentally it's a cost-benefit situation. And the cost of liability can be factored in really easily, which is what's the size of a customer database, all right? Say it's 1 million or 10 million. What's the cost of credit monitoring now for 2 years, because the new standard is not 1 year, it's 2 years, right? In bulk, you could buy that at $7 a year or $5 a year, right? You multiply that out, that's the maximum cost to the organization, because as we've seen, even reputational harm is temporary. Your stock market dip is temporary. And so that's the max cost. So I'm going to spend less than that, multiplied by some risk factor, right? I work it out and like, that's it. That's all it is.
Right.
But, well, the government has in the past, at least in the United States, come down really hard on industries. So I'm thinking now of the Wells Fargo situation, in which they were limited in the amount they were allowed to grow. And that hurts. It's not the fine, it's a limit on the basic urge of business, the raison d'etre for a business, which is to grow. I don't know that it can apply to security, because while you can be caught doing wrong, you can be punished for wrongdoing. How do you solve an insoluble problem to the satisfaction of the government? I mean, I hear what Ethan is saying. It's absolutely true that a rap on the knuckles is not the same as cutting off your face. But technologically, I think there's a challenge here that we haven't risen to. We have not yet atoned for putting the world's business on a publicly shared network. That's what we atone for every day when we spend money and try and implement piece part security products to fix this point problem and that point problem. Or we're going to send out, my favorite, of course, is we're going to send out phishing mails, which catches people, right, and doesn't stop others. And by the way, isn't really good when all you need is one executive assistant to click on the fake link, right?
But
Executive. It's usually the executive.
Yeah.
But it brings up a good point, because it kind of creates that adversarial relationship that security departments, the Department of No, has with everyone. The constant phishing tests, the requirements to change your password every X number of days. One of my old friends at IBM, he would constantly change his passwords every 30 days because that was the minimum expiration on that credential. Now, the problem is that he just basically rotated down the list of old password 1, old password 2, and whatever. And then you get the people who are like, oh, well, now you don't need passwords. Or, you don't need to make them like, we're constantly changing, we're moving the goalposts. In telling people, oh, well, this is important until it's not, and now this is becoming a deal. And I think we're honestly targeting the wrong people. We're targeting the entry-level knowledge workers who are just trying to get their jobs done, who are overworked and doing things. I think we need to spend more time, I'll say it, embarrassing the executives. We didn't have, there were people who were saying things like, remember when that kid started tracking Elon Musk's jet?
Yeah.
And suddenly we started having a conversation about the privacy of flight tracking systems and things like that. Do you think that anybody cared until it was somebody who was super rich and got embarrassed when he was being ratted out? Do you think if we started, publicly posting that the CEO of I don't know, SoftBank clicked on a phishing email? Because my good friend, Dr. Tracy Cart at Purdue, when I was in her class, said there's only 2 ways to motivate people: fear and greed. Ethan's brought up the fact that they're all greedy and they want the most they can get for the least amount of money. And as long as the cyber insurance policy pays off on the risk, they don't care. Well, now it's time to flip the script. Now we need to scare them. And it's worked, because when we have so many systems that are interconnected now, and someone can get in and business email compromise, I can drain your account in a matter of minutes with no way for you to get the money back. Now we've got a problem, because now there is a financial penalty, not from a government agency, not from an oversight board. You can't appeal some hacker in a different country getting your EA to send them $10,000 worth of Apple gift cards. That money's gone. So is it time for us to change the way we do things? And let's be fair. it's not going to make us very popular in security. But if we're going to be villains, let's be villains.
I think there's another.
I think there's a level of
sorry, Bruno.
personal responsibility that the CEOs and the C-suite needs to take as well. As long as it's the corporation that is going to be fined and not the CEO and CIO and things like that, nothing's going to change. And even if the CEO is charged personally, if they still have access to corporate funds to pay his legal fees, again, nothing's going to change. He's just going to fight that tooth and nail, and eventually, shareholders are not going to want that to happen, and it's going to be the little guy that pays those bills. It's going to be the line worker, the minimum wage worker that works for that company that doesn't get the raise that pays for it in the end. So it's, this goes beyond security, but I think that, the whole system is broken. Even with COVID, airlines got a whole bunch of money to not lay off employees. Airlines still laid off employees, and CEOs took home big bonuses for that. So I think that just spills over into the security side of the world as well.
Yeah, you're on to something there, Bruno, but I want to be careful here because we're taking a decidedly anti-corporate bent here, which I'm like, I'm sympathetic to. But let's be honest, corporations are victims. And what we're experiencing now for the first time are organized, rationalized businesses whose motive is profit. You can, the industry has, the malware industry, if I could call it that, has organized itself into different providers. Ransomware as a service, people who discover and resell exploits, right? Distributors, if you will, consortiums who provide fully functional platforms to attack, right, and take a cut. So it's a production system with distribution, product development, distribution, and implementation. So I think there's we got to be careful that we don't let our angst about corporate behavior cloud the picture that the corporations and their, greedy CEOs aside, they're victims, and therefore we're all victims, right? Because let's assume there are greedy CEOs who are taking home the pandemic incentives, they raise prices to pay for the cyber insurance. I mean, it is knock-on effect. This is criminal behavior, and we are pushing a rock uphill, right? And what's even more interesting about it, more depressing, I guess I should say, is that a lot of this lawlessness is outside of our normal judicial and legal and police capabilities, right?
Yeah. It's the Isle of Tortuga. There's always going to be pirates out there.
Yeah, but pirates who can sit in their babushka's basement and attack a healthcare company in Australia and publish all of the the details. That's criminal behavior we don't have a good response for.
Well, but the Australians actually do. And that particular hack that you're talking about, to quote Patrick Gray from Risky Business, they took the leash off the hounds.
Yes.
And now it became less about defensive measures and more about offensive measures. And we're starting to see that. The Kaseya hack from a couple of years ago, the FBI had those servers owned from the moment they popped up. And they were able to get the decryption keys, and they needed to see the money get deposited in the account so they could build a case. Now, of course, there's not a whole lot you can do about it when that person's outside of your jurisdiction, although they have coordinated some pretty impressive raids in Western Europe. But that's the problem of building your businesses on a global open platform, is that you have enabled the businesses that want to attack your businesses to leverage that same global open platform. And
funny that you call malware a business, but that's the truth.
This isn't kids defacing websites for street cred anymore. Patrick was even saying on one of his shows, they have vacation times that they have to request. Like I'm going to be away from my keyboard for the next week on holiday in Spain, so nobody crash a nuclear power plant because I'm not going to be able to like fix that code or something. Like they are literally treating it like an organized business. And the downside, of course, is that now that they have that operational capability, that it's just going to get worse. The upside is that if they treat it like a business, it means they have people who are running the thing that can be caught and sent to prison or, basically, erased from the internet. But the problem comes back to kind of, as you've alluded to, security for itself, for the sake of security, is not enough. It has to support the business. Just like IT, just like accounting, just like marketing. All of the things that we do have to support the goal of the business, which, depending on who you ask, is to either make money or make money for the shareholders. That's a whole hobby horse I can sit on for hours. But the ultimate problem is that until we can provide that the security platform that we're going to buy, that we're going to implement, the cyber insurance policy that we're going to buy is going to ultimately support the business, this problem doesn't go away.
Well, the big issue there is in most organizations, IT and security as a result of that is seen as a cost center. IT departments need to work to understand the business, see how they deliver business value, talk to the business side of the organization in the same terms that they understand. It's not necessarily fun, but if you want to be seen as something more than a cost center where you're a necessary expense, that's what you've got to do. You've got to show them how you're helping them to either do things more efficiently, more effectively, or open up new avenues of business they weren't able to do before.
It's the challenge, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, accounting gets off easy because they're finding the money.
So
I wanted to bring up one other thing in this conversation, and that's not to let the security vendors off the hook as well in some of their definitions. We saw in a presentation today that, one of the vendors called something logically air-gapped. Like, that's not a thing. It's either air-gapped or it's not. So sell it appropriately, market that product appropriately as well. Because it's, not many security people or IT people, they may not see through that as well. So there's plenty of, I don't know, blame is the wrong word, but there's plenty of, I'll continue to use the word blame, but plenty of blame to go around as to why security is hard.
It's not the right word, but it is the most appropriate.
Yeah, and I wanted to throw in just in the last couple of minutes, like, first of all, I've loved all this discussion, but I lose sleep at night because of ransomware, the fear of state-funded hackers, of organized crime, all the things we've been talking about. But I lose patience during the day because of insider threats, because I'm constantly trying to engineer out the stupid of things that we do, mistakes that I make, like fighting that system admins with global admin access to systems should be required to have multi-factor authentication. I'm still fighting that. Those are things that generally I don't have to convince someone to buy because we're already paying for it. I want people to stop putting things in open buckets. I want to stop people from sending their spreadsheets around with all the sensitive data. Let's also remember that Dave from that famous comic is our biggest threat. It's the person who has rights and access who can't remember the best way to do things or the minimally viable way to do things.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I'm glad you went there because I was about to go there too. Because the insider aspect is actually twofold. I mean, you have the malicious insider,
Yes.
who wants to, cause harm and havoc and chaos.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the insiders who, for lack of a better way of saying it, don't know any better.
Yeah.
Or they may not necessarily think through, if I do this one little thing, that there's a ripple effect, right, downstream. Or, oh, I just deleted this file, no big deal, and not realizing that there's larger implications of, you just actually dropped a database table.
Yeah.
It's those kinds of things that kind of coming back to the idea of security is just difficult because it's not just the external actors, it's the internal actors as well. And it also feeds that you have to kind of be very careful about how you balance it, because then you do get in it's almost like a feedback loop of reinforcing that adversarial conversation. And it's hard.
I think that the ultimate goal of all of this is not to tell people to get over it, like we kind of opened with a little bit, but to get people on board with it. I mean, we've finally reached a point in our lives where we know certain things to be true. We don't accept robocalls from people telling us that they're the IRS and that our social security number is going to be suspended, because we've educated folks to the point where that's probably something they know is up. Phones have longer passcodes, or we use different things that are not pins, or stuff like that. We're slowly moving that window forward so that we're overall more secure. But as we become more secure, the threats have to get more specific in order to be able to exploit that capability. And so we're constantly still going to be playing that game of cat and mouse, but we have to get everybody on board with it. It's not just a tool. It's not just a one-off platform. It is a whole way of thinking. And when you change it to a way of thinking, it actually makes it a whole lot easier for you to get everyone in the business to align with what you're trying to do. Because if the ultimate goal is to make as much money for the company as possible, the best way to do that is to keep people from taking your valuable resources, whether they are people, intellectual property, or in some cases, your actual money. And you've got to find a way to convince people how important that is.